Have you ever been just craving a chocolate chip cookie? You finally get that cookie, you bite into it, and discover something better. An oatmeal raisin cookie. Well, this is kind of like what it is with playing Bus. You're thinking that you're going to get a cute game with nice, pleasant aesthetics, and instead you're going to get into the meanest, most cutthroat game you've ever experienced. And today, I'm going to teach it to you in 10 minutes or less. So the eternal first question is, how do you win in Bus? Victory points, shown here on the track. You might as well stop looking after about 11 or 12 because you're not going to go much higher than that in a game of Bus. It is very mean, very cutthroat, and if you're not trying to improve your own position, you are actively trying to disrupt other people's positions. How do you get victory points? By taking the vroom action. What does the vroom action do, you ask? The vroom action allows, in turn order, players to transport passengers to their desired locations. In this instance, they want to go to work. So, in this example, this passenger would simply walk to the work of this intersection, while this passenger will take this player's line, go to work, and then that player on that line with that color is going to score 1 victory point. So while we might be getting ahead of ourselves a little bit in that regard, that really is the crux of the game. You're trying to do that as many times as possible, while preventing other players from doing the same. To accomplish this, you're going to need to use the actions on the right-hand side of the city center map. So let's go down from top to bottom, and I'll explain what these actions do. The first thing to note about actions is that you must always choose the lowest alphabetical letter available on the board, meaning that if I was the yellow player, and I'm going to take the line expansion action, I must put my piece on the A here. And then, if I'm the blue player, and I wanted to choose line expansion as well, I must place it on the B. So after everyone has passed and we move on to resolving the actions, now we resolve them from left to right. So, even though green was the last to place their piece there, they will be able to take that action first. However, the maximum amount of times an action can be taken is dictated by whichever player has the most amount of buses. This means that the yellow player can take the action twice, blue player once, and the green player will not be able to take the line expansion action even though they've placed one of their markers there, resulting in a erroneous turn, forfeited turn, whatever you want to call it. It's a bad turn. I went ahead and added an extra bus to the blue player's bus depot. That way I can demonstrate what the line expansion turn is going to look like when played out on the board. The green player goes first but can only put 1 line. The blue player goes second, they can put 2, and the yellow player goes last but gets to put down 3. When expanding a bus line, you must expand from one of its 2 ends. So, based on the initial setup here, this is an end for the green and this is an end. End for the blue, end for the blue, end for the yellow, end for the yellow. So if I'm the green player going first, I can build here, I can build here, here, or here, here. Now here is where the game can break some people's brains when it comes to line expansion. One of the rules of Bus is that you're not allowed to build parallel to another person's bus line. However, when 2 ends meet, you can actually build parallel where those 2 ends meet. So this would actually be a legal move because you've got the end of green and the end of yellow meeting there. And so green does have the option to build parallel there. However, let's say the next time they build, they can't continue in this fashion. Instead, they're going to have to pick an empty road to build off of. We have 1 built for green. Let's move on to the 2 for blue. So, blue cannot build here or here. They must build from here or here from that end, here or here or here or here. You get the idea. So they're going to go ahead and build 1 here, and they want to aim for some of these 2s for later in the game, so let's build here. Okay, so here comes the other edge case rule. In the rulebook it says if there are no empty streets at one of the ends, you can expand your bus line parallel to another player's line. So in this instance, yellow could actually build here because there's no empty streets. However, they cannot continue to build along that. They would eventually have to branch out here. Moving on to the next space, a very hotly contested space, is the buses. Putting your pawn here allows you to add another bus to your depot. And what this does is when you take the vroom action, you can move more than 1 passenger each time you take the vroom action. So if we took the vroom action, the blue player would be able to move 3 passengers,
green could move 1, and now yellow can do 2. Additionally, whoever has the most buses in their depot dictates the maximum amount of moves that anyone can take on any of the spaces in the game. Getting into maybe a more last resort move is the passengers action. Placing your pawn here, and remember, I did mention that you have to place your pawn in the lowest alphabetical space available. So, place your pawn here, and then, depending on how many buses there are out, in this case, if we're going with the 3 buses for the blue player, you can place up to 3 passengers in either this depot or this depot. So in this case, I'm going to go with 2 here and 1 here. On to buildings. This is where the game can get downright mean. Place your pawn on the lowest alphabetical space available, then place buildings on the board on the lowest number available space. For example, here, we actually still have 1 spaces available. So until all of these 1 spaces are covered with a building, we cannot put any buildings on any of the 2 and higher spaces. Let me give you an example of that aforementioned meanness. So we can see here that yellow has placed one of their markers on the vroom space. They are anticipating moving this little passenger here all the way up to this workspace. When we get to the resolve the clock action, and I'll get to that in just a moment, the hand is going to move 1 space in a clockwise fashion. Therefore, the yellow player is correctly anticipating the hand to move to the workspace. So what is blue going to do? They're going to take the building action and place a workspace on this open 1 right here. What this is going to result in is during the vroom phase, when passengers want to get to where they're going, instead of going down the line here, they're simply just going to walk to this workspace here because it's on this intersection. And now yellow is not going to score any points for delivering that passenger. Ouch. In bus, once we move through the resolve phase, the clock hand will move once in a clockwise fashion automatically each round. Yellow, however, in a fit of rage from blue's move, decides to put their piece here. Now what this does gives yellow one of 2 options. They can either do nothing and the clock hand will move naturally, or they can really mess with the game here, grab one of these time stones, and instead of that natural progression, the clock will no longer move that round. Instead, it will stay on the turn it was previously on. Now, at the end of the game, for every one of these you possess, you will be -1, but it can be very good for messing with other players who have set up big turns for vroom actions. And so now, not only will they not score points, but all of their pawns that they placed on those action spaces are going to be gone for good. At the beginning of the game, you only have 20 of those. So for every lost one of those actions, it can hurt you greatly on the back end of the game. I already mentioned the vroom phase as the first action when leading off in this teach, so I'm not going to really go into too much detail here. What I will say is that passengers are basically first come, first serve, and you can use the vroom action as a way to pull passengers off other players' bus lines. So let's say here that the blue and the yellow player share that common passenger, and that yellow, even though they got kind of stiffed on this passenger who's going to end up walking here when the work phase starts, they decide they want to hurt blue bad here. So they're going to go ahead and vroom this passenger all the way up to this line here and take them to work. Not only are they going to score a victory point here, but now blue no longer has access to that passenger off the bus line, and because their ends are here and here, it's going to be very tough for them to build in order to get that passenger back. And the last spot is fairly self-explanatory. Take the action here, which only has 1 space. Take this cute little bus, and now you're the starting player for the next round. Starting player in bus is extremely important. So in bus, on your turn, you must use at least 2 of your action pawns. After that, you can choose to pass, or you can continue using more and more of your pawns that round. However, actions are only good for as many buses as there are in the depot. So you could, as I mentioned earlier, take actions that result in not being able to do anything. So the actions will be carried out top to bottom and left to right for each one of these rows. And then once that's finished, we clear the board off, determine the start player based on who took the starting player action, or it will naturally pass around in a clockwise fashion. We start again, take your 2 actions at a minimum, take more if you want, and this keeps repeating until the last stone is removed from the clock, game ends immediately, and we do not resolve the last 2 actions. If on the last round only one player has any action pawns left, or if all of the building locations on the board are taken up. And that, my friends, is Bus. Thanks for watching this video. Stick around, there'll be more to come.